The conflict unfolding across the Middle East has entered a far more dangerous and unpredictable phase as escalating hostilities between Iran, the United States, and their regional allies spill across borders and draw multiple countries into an expanding confrontation. What initially appeared to be a contained cycle of retaliation has now evolved into a multi-front conflict stretching from the Gulf to Iraq, raising serious concerns among analysts that the region may be sliding toward a broader and more devastating war. On March 30, tensions surged dramatically following reports of Iranian-linked strikes targeting United States military assets across the region. Among the most alarming developments were claims that drone attacks had been launched against installations inside the United Arab Emirates, a country that hosts critical infrastructure and has long been considered one of the Gulf's most secure and stable states. The alleged targeting of radar systems and military deployment sites marked a significant escalation, suggesting that the battlefield is expanding beyond traditional zones of confrontation and into key strategic hubs. These developments are part of a wider pattern that has emerged over recent weeks. Iran's military response, framed by its leadership as retaliatory action against U.S. and Israeli operations, has increasingly focused on high-value targets. According to regional data and defense assessments, thousands of missile and drone attacks have been carried out against U.S. bases and allied infrastructure across multiple countries. The scale and intensity of these operations highlight not only Iran's operational capabilities, but also its willingness to broaden the geographic scope of the conflict. The United Arab Emirates, in particular, has faced repeated waves of attacks. Defense officials in the country have reported intercepting dozens of ballistic missiles and drones in a single day, with cumulative figures running into the hundreds of missiles and thousands of drones since the conflict intensified. These repeated interceptions underscore both the pressure on air defense systems and the persistent threat posed by Iranian operations. The UAE's strategic importance, both as an economic hub and as a location for U.S. military assets, makes it a critical focal point in the evolving conflict. At the same time, Iran's strategy appears to be targeting the technological backbone of U.S. military operations. Reports indicate that a U.S. E-3 Sentry aircraft, a highly advanced airborne radar system essential for surveillance and missile detection, was struck at a Saudi airbase. The destruction of such an asset represents a significant operational setback, as these aircraft play a crucial role in coordinating air defense and monitoring threats across vast areas. Analysts view this as a calculated move to degrade U.S. situational awareness and reduce its ability to respond effectively to incoming attacks. Beyond individual strikes, there is growing evidence that Iran's approach is designed to systematically weaken the defensive infrastructure of its adversaries. Radar systems, air defense installations, and logistical hubs have all been targeted in various attacks across the region. This pattern suggests a broader strategic objective to create vulnerabilities that can be exploited in future operations, potentially enabling more successful and impactful strikes. The conflict's geographic spread is one of its most concerning aspects. What began as a confrontation involving Iran, Israel, and the United States has now expanded into a regional crisis involving multiple countries. Attacks have been reported across the Gulf, in Iraq, and in other parts of the Middle East, with each new incident adding to the complexity and volatility of the situation. The Strait of Hormuz, a critical choke point through which a significant portion of the world's oil supply passes, has become a focal point of concern. Disruptions in this area have already begun to affect global markets, with oil prices rising sharply amid fears of further instability. The economic implications of the conflict are becoming increasingly apparent as energy markets react to the possibility of prolonged disruptions and supply constraints. Amid this broader escalation, Iraq has once again emerged as a central battleground. The country's strategic location and its complex internal dynamics make it particularly vulnerable to the spillover effects of regional conflict. In recent weeks, multiple attacks have targeted military bases and diplomatic sites within Iraq, many of them attributed to Iran-aligned groups operating within the country. One of the most striking incidents occurred near Baghdad International Airport, where a rocket attack reportedly destroyed an aircraft at a military base. The explosion, which sent flames into the night sky and was heard across the city, underscored the intensity of the violence and the vulnerability of even heavily fortified locations. Reports indicated that multiple rockets struck the base, overwhelming air defense systems and causing significant damage. This incident marked a notable shift, as it was described as the first time that this particular base, long considered one of the safest and most secure in Iraq, had been successfully targeted. Although there were no American soldiers present at the time, as the base had reportedly been evacuated, the attack carries symbolic and strategic significance. It demonstrates that no location can be considered entirely secure in the current environment. The Iraqi government has responded with a mix of urgency and caution, seeking to assert control over the situation while avoiding further escalation. Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani convened an emergency meeting of the country's national security leadership to assess the developments and outline a response. The state is the sole possessor of the decision of war and peace, Mohammed Shia al-Sudani said. This statement reflects Iraq's determination to maintain sovereignty and prevent external actors from dictating its security posture. The Prime Minister made it clear that the government would not tolerate actions that undermine its authority or drag the country into a wider conflict. It will not allow any party or individual to usurp this right, Mohammed Shia al-Sudani said. At the same time, Iraqi officials outlined a series of measures aimed at strengthening security and responding to ongoing threats. These include efforts to counter military aggression, particularly attacks involving drones and warplanes, and to pursue those responsible for attacks on security institutions and civilian infrastructure. This will be done using all available means in accordance with the fundamental principle of the right to respond and self-defense, he said. The government also emphasized the importance of legal accountability, signaling its intention to take action against individuals and groups involved in attacks on state institutions. No individual is beyond the reach of legal enforcement, the Iraqi leadership warned. These measures reflect the delicate balancing act that Iraq faces. On one hand, the government must respond to attacks and assert control over armed groups within its borders. On the other hand, it must navigate a complex web of regional relationships and avoid becoming a battleground for larger powers. Diplomatically, Iraq has taken steps to address the situation on the international stage. Officials have indicated that they will lodge formal complaints with the United Nations Security Council regarding violations of Iraqi sovereignty. In addition, both U.S. and Iranian representatives have been summoned to receive official protest notes, underscoring Baghdad's attempt to hold all parties accountable while maintaining a neutral stance. The broader regional context adds another layer of complexity. The United States and Israel have intensified their operations against Iranian targets, reportedly striking military infrastructure and attempting to degrade Iran's missile capabilities. While these operations have had some impact, analysts caution that Iran retains significant capacity to continue its campaign. At the same time, Iran has expanded its response, targeting not only Israel but also U.S. assets and allied infrastructure across the region. This has drawn in additional actors, including Iran-backed groups in Yemen and Lebanon, further widening the scope of the conflict. In Yemen, armed groups aligned with Iran have launched attacks against Israeli targets, while in Lebanon, tensions along the border have escalated into active clashes. These developments illustrate the interconnected nature of the conflict, where actions in one area can quickly trigger reactions in another. Despite the escalating violence, there are indications that diplomatic efforts are ongoing. Indirect talks between the United States and Iran have reportedly taken place through intermediaries, suggesting that both sides may still be seeking a way to de-escalate the situation. However, the continued exchange of strikes and the increasingly aggressive rhetoric from both sides cast doubt on the prospects for a near-term resolution. The risks associated with the conflict are not limited to the region itself. The potential for disruption to global energy supplies, combined with the involvement of multiple countries and armed groups, raises the possibility of wider economic and security consequences. Oil prices have already surged, and markets are reacting to the uncertainty created by the situation. Perhaps most concerning is the risk of miscalculation. With so many actors involved and so many fronts active, the likelihood of an unintended escalation is high. A single incident, whether a misidentified target, a failed interception, or an unexpected casualty, could trigger a chain reaction that pushes the conflict beyond its current boundaries. As the situation continues to evolve, the Middle East stands at a critical juncture. The expansion of hostilities into the Gulf, the intensification of attacks in Iraq, and the continued exchange of strikes between Iran, the United States, and Israel all point to a conflict that is becoming increasingly difficult to contain. Each new development adds to the sense of urgency and uncertainty as leaders across the region and beyond grapple with the implications of a conflict that shows no signs of slowing down. The decisions made in the coming days and weeks will be crucial in determining whether the situation can be stabilized or whether it will escalate into a broader and more destructive war. For now, the region remains on edge, with governments, militaries, and civilians alike bracing for what may come next.